cool. I mean, take a look at that. You can definitely see a secondary sun there. So do you think that's lens flare? Is that a sundog, clay pigeon, concentrated swamp gas? Is that Project Bluebeam? Are they just trying to mess with our minds with holographic technology? I don't know. But it's pretty darn cool nonetheless. Now, Jason is going to describe to us the information he's compiled of what he feels is the orbit of Nibiru, Wormwood, Planet X, the Red Kachina, the Winged Destroyer. Now, he's got texts and data not only from the Hebrew version of the Bible, but also texts from China and South Pacific. So he's going to bring together a plethora of intel for us. And also, towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you some recent photographs that were sent to me by somebody of the name of Jason as well that lives in California. Some of the best photographic evidence that I have seen to date of a second sun. So stay tuned, folks. And remember, we actually had a disconnection situation twice. We were disconnected twice during the beginning of the Skype call, and we've kind of had to put it back together. So we'll continue where we left off. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. We've been disconnected now twice, ladies and gentlemen, and Jason's been able to get back on with us. Now, the first time we got disconnected, what happened was when he logged back on, his hotspot had a different name, and it also said that you were shut down for until 6 a.m., right, Jason?
Yeah.
Okay.
I called Comcast, and they said I was shut down until 6 a.m. in my area. And now it still says I'm connected to number 2 for whatever reason.
And you don't have a number 2, you've said.
No.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
Now, for those who've heard of Project Stingray, there's certain technologies out there that can spoof either cell phone towers or Wi-Fi spots, so the person that puts those up can actually get all the information that's transferred to and from that specific area. Now, I don't know who's listening to these conversations or why, but this is very strange indeed, because this is the second time we've had to upload this, and it's not like we're talking about anything that's, classified, so this is very strange. Now, this chart that you've put together, Jason, I think this is very interesting because when we got disconnected before, what we brought up was the approximate 360-year timeline where these cataclysms take place about every 360 years. And this correlates with Gil Broussard's work, where, as I said before, he's taken texts and information from all over the globe, even, Asia, and it talks about how these catastrophes happen approximately every 360 years. So walk us through the information that you've put together, if you would.
Well, you get a chronological order. I'll go ahead and start with that and just do my own pointer up because I forgot to add 2 into this one. But you got Noah's flood, and I'll just do this breakdown of this real quick. And after that, you had 364 years after that, between that and the Tower of Babel with Sodom and Gomorrah, which was 2016 BC. And then after that, you have Joseph of Egypt, which is the second recorded biblical pole shift, I believe, in 1793. And that was 192 years. And then we can go to this chart back here again. Let me see this one. Yeah, so then you have the Exodus of Egypt, which is 1518 BC, and then 52 years between. And that, I believe, is because at the same time, we believe something hit the planet Ceres and destroyed it, and basically made a third of the asteroid belt. And I'll bring up a picture real quick to kind of correlate with that. Should be at the bottom of my thing. Yeah, right here. There's the asteroid belt. There's Ceres in orbit, and this shows you where their distance from the sun is. It's directly between Mars and Jupiter. So if something passed between Mars and Jupiter, it would have hit that if it was, lined up right. And that's why the asteroid belt in Ceres is there. Ceres is a third of the size. It looks almost like an asteroid. It's uneven. And then they've confirmed that about a third of the material in the asteroid belt's made up of it. So that's another compelling thing. So that's why the orbit could have been slowed down to 52 years. And I have another little diagram here to kind of show that. Just in a basic, quick way, you have a the object would have hit something, made a 52-year orbit, and then the next time it would have came out in 131 and 336, and then finally get into its normal orbit again. We do this with satellites and all kinds of things. It's a slingshot technique. We just use
Okay.
gravity. Just basic. People can look that up and they know all about that. So just gave a basic diagram. And we'll go back. And then you can see, like I said, Joshua's long day, third recorded pole shift. There's like a 16-hour day right there, or 12-hour day. I'll go back into this all in detail, like I said. 131 years between things. Job's troubles, he had meteorites and crazy stuff happen then. 336. King David and King Saul, they had plagues and people dying and just lots of things going on, destruction at that time too. 360. Jonah warns of this thing coming in. They see a big red thing in the sky that was 50 times the moon, basically, the way they're like describing it. And the Hezekiah sundial, that's when the sun went down the steps 10 steps and went back up the steps and then back down the steps 10 steps, the shadow. 352 years after that, the second temple of a guy. We'll go more into that later here in a minute. 362 years later, Jesus dies, and the sun's blocked out for 3 hours, if you guys remember, before the Feast of Passover, which is a full moon and can't be a lunar eclipse. So, or a solar eclipse from the moon if we have a full moon.
Now you put a graph together on that too, didn't you, to show
Yeah,
that?
I could show that.
I thought that was pretty interesting because that puts a reference point on it for people to look at.
Yeah,
There it
so
is.
it says, now from the 6th hour of darkness fell upon the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? On Passover, it's celebrated on a full moon. Jesus was sacrificed on the eve of Passover, so the moon isn't physically involved in this at all. It can't be. And because you can't have a full moon and have it eclipse the sun, that makes no sense. That's the light source that's making the full moon full, so it can't block it out from our perception. It just makes no sense at all. So you would have another object, so I just call it Nibiru, put it in front of the sun, and then you'd see how the shadows would affect from our perception. You'd get one curved around this way, one curved around that way. So you have a 3-hour dark spot here at about that size, and it's not all actual size, but that's why the moon would turn blood red, like they reference in the Bible, and the sun would be blocked out, because this object's big enough and close enough to block out the sun from our perception, and it'd obviously be bigger and probably closer to us. This is just for reference to fit on paper. And I just put on there, kind of about the artifacts, about the Nebra sky disk and things like that. So we can go back to the other graph here again. So Jesus was sacrificed, and there you go. 284 years later, Constantine sees a cross in the sky, and says, "Go forth and conquer," in this symbol, like something like that. It's in Latin. I can go show you my references in a moment. But yeah, he sees a giant cross in the sky above the sun. 395 years later, there's a Mayan drought we see, and the end of their civilization, basically. 347 years later, we got the Chinese guest star, which was visible for about almost 700 days, and 23 days in the daytime. At one point, it actually became bigger than the moon in our sky.
Now, where did you get that information then?
This is all, you can look all this up right on Wikipedia, any of it. You can look this all up. I mean, it's all there. You can read, just correlate this all with events that happened in real life and in the Bible. You just start with, what do we know that says it happens then, and correlate the times. And then you correlate the times with what we have with artifacts, all the research that's always been done on this thing for 80, 20, since the 20s. You got people, their theories, YouTube videos, references, like just everything is, you get pointed, led in the right direction. You look, you find out, it checks out. You write it down, you can jot it down, and just put the notes and go from there. That's why I'm giving reference points to all these things, so everybody can look it up read more into it themselves and come to their own conclusions, you know, see if these events were even correlated or related at all, you know. I'm just putting that there's obvious things happening every so often, you know, and I may be doing it in my benefit, you know, to kind of maybe I'm seeing a pattern that's not there, you know. I don't know. But the Chinese guest star, that's the really big one because it's a supernova that was seen in our sky for 700 years, or for 700 days almost. And 23 in the daytime, it became bigger than the moon. It they have a prophecy over in China that when, you know, something like that appears in the sun or in the sky, that it's like a soul visiting and leaving, you know. And it was really spiritual to them because it was yellow at one point and then it became red and whitish, and you know, it was actually a book and a paper written on it by a guy named Lang Fang Ho or something like that. I can look into that for you in a moment if you'd like it, but it's called The Chinese Guest Star and the Creation of the Crab Nebula.
Well, I know
And
Gil Broussard talks a lot about that too.
yes, that's a very big, very big point in astronomy. Like, it's actually taught in school, you know, and like when you teach astronomy class, because it was unidentified and we don't know what it was. So they depicted things from their viewpoint. They measured things with reference points. Like, I'm here. There's this reference point. So they looked at things from the same point every day, and you know, charted the stars and things that came in the sky. And they were very spiritual about it. But Chinese records go back further than anybody's. You know what I mean? They're basically the first real written records, other than you know, when we go back into Sumerian and the biblical stuff, which is has literal and figurative translations and all kinds of stuff. You know, it's been, you
Have
know.
you seen those temples that have petroglyphs that show, and also carvings that have dinosaurs next to people?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah, I've seen those. A lot of them are believed to be like Native Americans or something, I guess. Wasn't that? Is
Oh
that what?
no, no, that's way. I mean, we're talking stuff in, you know, kind of South Pacific area, and then, you know, here's the thing about history: is it rewrites itself all the time. They
Yes.
find so many strange, what I call ooh parts, or just things that shouldn't be there, that are out of time, out of genre, and then you're like, wow, how did that get there? That just doesn't make any sense. But then if you look at the possibilities of different cycles, different timelines, you know, maybe we have been here for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. I mean, they've got footprints in stone literally next to dinosaur prints. And if you look at some of the anomalies where they've got, I don't know if you've heard of Michael Cremo, he's got an entire book, it's about 800 pages, called Forbidden Archaeology, where they found tools and artifacts that are over 1 million years old. I mean, it's just totally strange.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like it's almost and they're not supposed to be there, like in like they're inlaid in the rock and stuff, and they don't know how to get there, or the how to
right.
get there. See, there's a lot of theories on that actually, like they shared a space and time for a moment. If you do the math, like E equals MC squared and E equals T and all those theories they have out there about, you know, energy, um, the math shows that two pieces of matter could physically share the same pace, you know, place and time, but
Hmm.
not, you know, touch because, you know, how matter is.
Well, and
So
another thing too, and I just want to interject this real quick if I can, because I've often wondered if there's been this reset that just continually, every several hundred years, whenever civilization gets too much power and influence and doesn't keep balance and harmony within the world for whatever reason, maybe this reset could possibly be Planet X.
yeah, it's like a natural way. Like when you look at, you know, our universe and our solar system in particular, a lot of things stand out and shouldn't be there. Like NASA themselves said it'd be easier to explain the moon isn't there than it would be to explain it is, because of how it perfectly blocks out the sun and its
Hmm.
rotation always facing us like a satellite dish. Um, it just doesn't make sense. So a lot of it's too perfect. It's almost like something set something up that it almost is like a self-cleansing fish tank, you know, you could say.
Ah,
And
yeah.
and it's always around the math. Like I said, the 360. Our Earth used to go around a 360-day orbit, and the calendars show that. Um, it would just make sense that, you go metric from there and things with size get bigger and, something bigger that has maybe another sun, a binary sun, would have this eccentric orbit. And a lot of the comets actually share the same orbit that I believe this has. So that would make a lot of sense to me. You know, some of these debris, just kind of lost their way, but still get pulled around,
Hmm.
by it and by our sun and just the force of the universe.
Certainly. Now, what are we looking at here?
This would be the first thing they talk about in the Bible that people survived. I guess there's a flood that nobody survived. They talk about, but this is Noah's flood, and we can kind of date that with the artifacts and the time, and a lot of things. But the professionals say, and you guys can look this up, that Noah's flood happened around 239 or 2349 BC. And I believe that that's around, they describe, a pole shift there because of a couple particular things that happened. Um, and I read a list of facts there. It says facts from the Bible. It said it rained for 40 days. The water was high for 150 days. And then the boat rested after that. And then about 253 days, they seen tops of the mountains come down. So the water started to come down. 300 days, they found land. It was like floodlands. And then 314 days, the water dried up. And 370, you had about a year later, you had plants and stuff back. So that's what it tells us in the Bible. And I just drew a little diagram. When it talks about the things that happened 150 days, and if you look at the orbits of the cycle there and how it would cross, it would be about 5 months, which is 150 days between intersections on the Earth's orbit. So if it had comets and debris trails and water that wasn't, of this Earth, and it drug it through, it would be coming in, just say it's coming in this way, all right? And the Earth's coming in this way. So for the purpose of this diagram, I drew a brown side and a green side. So as Noah was coming through, you'd have to be on the nighttime side to be safe, or the meteorites would have got him. So he comes through, and like I said, this side, because of the debris coming around, the debris would be coming towards Nibiru. All right. So the nighttime side, the side away from the sun at this point, would be safe. And then as it crosses through, the 150 days, because you're in between the orbit still, the meteor trail and the debris trail. So as you get up here a little ways, the green side starts to get hit by it on the other side because the debris trail is going right to left. And so the daytime side would actually be safe at that point. So there's a good indicator that we had at least somewhat of a pole shift if, nighttime and daytime sides and, boats and things like that. He was on opposite sides of the world 150 days later, probably maybe at the same time. But
Sure.
I marked that Passover literally marks the date, because it seems that Passover literally is talking about this object. And it seems like they edited that out of the Bible, or maybe that was in the Bible code with the numbers, and we're not seeing it because we weren't, speaking the ancient language. So,
Okay.
uh, just I got some Bible verses there. Genesis 19:23. And this was about Sodom and Gomorrah. This was the next part, 364 years later. So the sun had risen. The Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, basically. And he overthrew those cities and the inhabitants of the cities and burned what was on the ground. And when this guy turned around and looked back, she became a pillar of salt. A lot of people translate that and say that it was almost like a nuclear flash, almost like
Right.
when you look at Hiroshima. Said, now Abraham arose early in the morning and went to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he looked down at Sodom and Gomorrah in the land, and it smoked like a furnace. And then there's 192 years later, another polar shift there, you could say, because of the evidences in the land, astrological records at the time, and the diagrams they picture, and where they drew them from in reference point is actually shifted, um, I believe 26, 28 degrees at that point. The constellations shouldn't have been seen in the sky and things like that when they had their depictions. And it kind of just shows this through the charts that, and we all know this, and they tell you this in class, that a shift can happen gradually or real fast over time. But 28 degrees, it's a gradual thing, and we know the Earth is tilted at about that. That's what gives us the seasons. So it's just something more to think about. But the pole shift really wouldn't be, you know, too catastrophic if it was that slow, you know what I mean? It would be the meteor showers and the stress that if this thing was close enough that time, that the stress that on the plates. So,
One thing that's interesting to think about is if there is a way to, because there was a couple Caltech professors, or I don't know if they're professors, but some people with Caltech that actually said they found a planet 9. They call it the ninth planet in
yeah.
between Jupiter and Saturn. Now, if it's there right now, if they can figure out what size it is, and then, okay, so how long would it take to get from there to wherever it's going, whether that be how close is it actually going to get to Earth? And if we know its reference point, then, see, I'm not an astronomer. I'm just a reporter. Is there a way to, okay, we're going to look at this part of the sky. We're going to record at a certain time of day, and that's going to give us our best shot to pick up this planet X.
Okay, well, yeah, basically, if you look at this, I can even pull up the chart for today if you wanted. I think I have it up here.
That'd be great.
Right there. There's the planets right now. Um, you can overlay, I guess, my chart on top of that if we could. Let me minimize this. Kind of.
No.
There we go. So we can look at it and see that this is what I was talking about. This is the placement. So they're talking about the astronomical units. They're not meaning literally it might not be between Saturn and Jupiter, like right here. It could be just in between the space anywhere on this circle. Okay? So
Okay.
and that actually correlates with everything everybody's been telling us because, I mean, if you look at about where I drew it for right now, that's basically where I said it was going to be. You know what I mean? And April 23rd, I believe, Passover this year, between now and Passover 2017, is my estimate of when it'll cross Earth orbit the first time. And I believe 150 days after that, just about. So, September 23rd, I guess, something like that. Would be maybe that I can't remember the exact date, but there'd be those two paths. So that would be the day the Earth, about 6 days after that, where according to these charts, we would be coming right into that first debris trail right here, about 6 days after Passover. So if that's the case, we'd be hitting a pretty rugged meteor shower on the daytime side of the Earth, and the exit point on September next year would be right when we were talking about the other alignment. If you look at this whole chart and everything,
Okay.
it would even make sense, the placement of the dragon in the sky and the alignment of Earth and Jupiter and all that with Virgo and all that in the sky. It would we'd be September, I believe, around here somewhere. Virgo would be here, the planet would be here. So Jupiter would be right here, and yeah, it would all line up, It would just the way we were talking about it and showed you with the chart. But this object's even coming in, and the information that NASA's given us correlates with this. And if they're kind of solidifying that it's there for us, they're letting us know. They're not telling us that it's on the approach, crossing orbits, you know what I mean? And when you look at this, I think, let me show you right here. I got it up. So if I pull up the comets, all right. So if you look at where the comets are there, and that actually makes sense that there would be another sun, somewhere probably to the right. I'd say in our perception of North America, where we are in orbit with the sun right now, it'd probably be to the right if it was filmed in North America, and maybe I'd say the south, probably 26, a couple degrees to the south and to the right, and that'd just be my guess, But right here in the center of this, you can see how these comets concentrate this way. And like I said, that little ball of ice. I mean, if people know about physics and stuff, what's making that little ball of ice come around and just swing around the sun and then go way back out here, but make a turn and come back in? There has to be something in the middle making it turn. You know what I mean? There has to be another orbit pulling it in. The sun's not gonna pull it in sharply way out here. So there's something in here, perturbing and making these things orbit. So that also means there's objects out here, near Leo and Aries. There's definitely a cluster and concentration over here, of objects too. But
Mm-hmm.
it all correlates. The data, like I said, it just correlates with what we know and the facts. So, I mean, I made a diagram, like I said, so you could kind of see where to be looking in the sky type stuff. And like I said, my guess from the charts would be to the right of the sun, maybe below it. So as the sun would rise, it would kind of stay in the same spot of the sky, possibly, you know what I mean? Just depending on the curvature of, what part of how high the sun is in the sky, because the curvature of the earth, and that throws a lot of stuff off with the atmosphere and kind of refracts and makes things look bigger, like I was telling you before. Like those images, those people think are, huge planets in the solar system when they only see them on a camera. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it with their naked eye, but they take a picture and they're like, oh, look at that huge planet. It's like a photo, like a projector you see in school.
Well, and another thing too is there was a photo that was presented to us here at the Leak Project where it looked like this giant red moon or planet or anomaly on a sky cam, or it was actually not a sky cam, it was just a webcam. I think it was Italy or something like that, And this
Yeah.
thing just looked huge, and I'm thinking, wow, that's why isn't everybody seeing that? And then many people would say, well, it's because of the infrared or whatever. Well, you know what? I saw some other pictures after, like that kind of. I think what happened was the person that sent me this picture either had access to the other ones and didn't want to send me the other ones with it, or he didn't get them till afterwards. But I actually got access to a few other photos that looked like they were taken just right after that specific shot, if you're keeping up with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you know what it was? It's a big freaking spider.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was a red spider because you could
Oh,
see that you could see the legs over the lens.
yeah. And that
And
makes total sense, like,
yeah. So the one shot you're going to get, oh wow, that looks like a freaking red sun, and then
red orb.
yeah, and then the next thing it's got these freaking legs on it. You're like, wow, that's a big cosmic spider. No,
Yeah.
it's a spider on the camera.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta use your discretion, like you always say, and stay neutral. Don't assume that it's fake. Don't assume that it's real. Research, just look into it,
Yeah.
especially if it strikes you. That's why when people on your comments, told me, hey, you kind of have, a misunderstanding or this and that, I didn't want to disrespect their religion. And when I say I'm not religious, that means I don't follow a religion. That doesn't mean I don't have a God or understand what maybe a God is to me, or I'm not, spiritual in any way. That does not mean that.
Absolutely.
That people assume what they want, and I'm a truth seeker, so I'm not gonna say, yes, this is my religion or this and that until I know the truth. When I find out the truth, then I'll commit, okay? And that's all I can say, and that's my choice. So,
Hey, good for you, man. Don't assimilate. Do what you feel is right. I think everybody's got their own path, whether you're a Christian or you're agnostic or you're atheist or you practice hermetics or you're a Muslim. It doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is where is your heart? Where is your conscience? Where is your essence, folks? What are your actions? What are your intentions? It doesn't really matter what color your skin is or what religion you practice. I read some of these comments where people think they're just high and mighty, yet they're so judgmental, and they talk about how you need to be saved, and they're the ones just judge. Doesn't the Bible specifically say, judge not and not be judged, essentially?
yeah, they're completely missing the message. It's almost like that's been planted there in their mind to actually follow the one thing that they're supposed to not. It's almost like s- Satan leads their church anymore. And I'm not saying that in a rude way, but just look at the obviousness, you know.
Well,
They're
and look
sitting
at
in like gold thrones over there,
hmm
you know, literally with children starving on the world. I'm pretty sure Jesus said to give all your possessions away and stuff like that, be a man of God, not sit in a gold throne and let people starve, you know. But in $1 million churches, things like that. It's they're subjecting you so your mind isn't open, you know. These books were here. They just edited them. So don't get the facts twisted. Try to read the facts, you know. And remember that Hebrew language was their letters were their numbers. So they had things that you could call geometria or whatever like that. It would
hmm
be an equation in numbers and letters. And that's where I get these numbers. A lot of the numbers that I get are actual numbers in the Hebrew language and not written out in letters, okay? They specifically designated them as letters or numbers instead of letters. Like I showed you in the last video, they'd spell out 712, this that, but when they came to 1026, you know, they spelled out 1026, you know. And I believe, you know, April 23rd is the beginning of that. And Passover next year is the beginning of that, you know,
hmm
126 days, maybe 6 days after. So maybe April 30th. We should maybe have a meteor storm. That's something to look out for. There's like, these are definite timelines because of the numbers there. I'm just saying, if any of it's real and it was doing this stuff, that's when we'd see it. We'd see it April of next year. We'd have a meteor storm. Possibly this September if it crosses earlier, then you know if it crosses just a little bit earlier, you know what I mean? Maybe September's the entry point and April's the exit, you know, or vice versa. April's the entry and September's the exit. We don't know, but that'd be 150 days about, and that's just my guess, you know. Like I said, but it's all based on numbers and a lot of math and a lot of people's guesses too. You know what I mean?
hmm
Everybody out here has been sharing their information and translating their texts, and you know the internet's a crazy thing. So you know, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, like they say. So
Oh yeah, and
uh,
that's another thing. I guess we need to let our. Well, you know what? I don't even think that we need to give any more attention to these people out there that are leaving the majority of these comments, because I've noticed there's a few people in particular that are trying to stir the pot, and I think there's a few professionals out there that are literally trying to push people's buttons to get them to go after them to where they can take it and use it against them. There was actually a guy that was pushing the buttons of one of our listeners on a specific. And here's another thing that I find fascinating, Jason, is the Planet X videos get attacked more than anything. I mean,
yeah,
whether it's a 9/11 video or something on any other subject, it seems like this one in particular just gets nailed. It gets attacked, and it's very interesting. But there's a few people in particular that I've been keeping my eye on that they're really good. You know, I mean, they'll use
yeah,
certain verbiages and keywords, and you can tell they know what they're doing. They're like paid provocateurs or
yeah,
provocateurs. So be careful, guys, because they'll spin you, and then they'll take that information and use it against you. And if you go back and retaliate by making a stupid comment, like there was somebody that posted just a stupid comment on the channel, and I took it down as soon as I saw it, but the person he sent the comment to was trying to get that type of response out of him, and then he goes back and says, hey, I'm going to take this information and send it in to the, you know, to Big Brother, so have fun in Nazi California is essentially what he said. And it's like,
mm,
man, you got to be real careful out there.
yeah.
But
You
that's
definitely
why I've thought before maybe I should just take these comment sections down, but it seems like when I do that, the people send me a bunch of emails saying, hey, we want to see what people have to say about this. So I do my best to just keep it as civil as possible. So keep it civil, folks.
Yeah, that's I mean, anybody that's claiming that they're like awakened and this and that and you're being smug at the same time, that's like the first indicator that you're truly not awakened and, you know, not what you're speaking of. So, you know, don't take advice from a fool and don't let these people manipulate you into thinking any other way. Just like don't let me manipulate and into thinking any other way. Just I'm presenting you information that I've looked up and you can make your own assumptions, you know.
Exactly. Make your own decision, folks. That's what the Leak Project was designed for.
That's
Question
what
everything.
it's news that people don't want to talk about. Exactly. So the pick up where we left off there, 275 years after that, where were we? The Joseph of Egypt, the things we were talking about. It was a, well, I'll get more into that actually. So Joseph of Egypt had a plague, 7 years of, famine and drought and all this stuff. And then they had somebody had a dream. This was Genesis 37:9. Then he had another dream, and he told his brothers, "Listen, the dream. This time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And that's the actual first time they talk about the moon. So I thought that was something key to touch on too. They never talked about the moon in the Bible until that point. So uh, there you go. 275 years later, Exodus of Egypt, 1518 BC, partial creation of the asteroid belt, like I showed you. Um, it slowed its speed about 20 times, making it a 52-year rotation. I showed you that. Just like satellites, they don't go out as far if they don't have as much energy because the sun pulls them back, and that's just how it is. And that's why I believe that we had the 3 days of darkness or whatever it was. I'll get to it right here. The plague of darkness. Stretch out your hand towards the sky, the Lord said to Moses. And so darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt. So he stretched out his hand, and darkness covered Egypt for 3 days. But Israel had light for 3 days. Says that, I mean, plain as day. So that means the Earth's rotation stopped for 3 days for whatever reason. And that would be because if something came that close, we'd actually be in the plasma field of that big object as it's roaring through space, and then we would kind of be considered like part of that object as it's going by. So we would lose our rotation. We would start spinning as fast as it does. It'd kind of be a dead zone for us. And then that can be scientifically proven. I mean, it's just the idea of the debris trail behind it, or a comet or anything. Then Joshua's long day. That's 52 years after. Third recorded pole shift, because I wrote some facts down. We can look historically and see that 350,000 men army gathered in 1455 BC. So that's 11 years before this. Okay. And we can look that up historically and see the Assyrian army had that many men at that time. Okay, not biblically. So there's 11 years difference. Nibiru, they said something appeared 50 times in the sky. It was like seen this big thing in the sky. And the kings of the enemy's hidden caves, and their rotation slowed for Israel. It slowed, so Israel had a longer day and China had a longer night. And if you look at the Chinese records, they said that they recorded as a long night. You can look that up on Wikipedia, the long night, Chinese, whatever, history books. And Passover correlates with this again. 2 to 3 hours after that, a meteor shower happened in the Bible that discusses it. And I believe the pole was shifted again around that time, just twisted a little bit, like I showed you with the last diagram. Here, I'll show you again. And this one right here. See? I believe it's coming in at a slight angle underneath and just giving us a tug and spinning the Earth just a little bit as it comes around. So that's why, we have our tilt, I believe, and where the minor pole shifts are coming from every about 4 times this comes through, maybe every couple thousand years, And you can look back in the magnetic information in the lava and see that too. So, like I said, all this stuff you guys can look up on yourself. I'm just giving you starts, places to look and maybe see. Tell me if I'm wrong, and kind of help us correlate all this data, because it's a lot, a lot of stuff. And after that, they fled Israel down. I'll read the Joshua 10:11. As they fled down the road before Beth-horon and Ezekiah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them. More of them died from the hail than were killed by the swords. And then 131 years later, I forgot to touch on something. I put it up here. I put it actually later, but it shows that the Lord struck 150,000 of these people dead in the army. They woke up dead or whatever from, struck them with meteorites. And apparently that army was destroyed around that same time, historically. Like I said, that many men were there, and historically about half of them died a
Hmm.
couple years later. So you
Okay.
can look that up. The Assyrians. 131 years later, we called it Job's troubles, or whatever you want to call it in the Bible. The book of Job, his message. But all kinds of stuff were happening, like the donkeys, and people were attacking. It was like total chaos and anarchy.
Donkey?
Donkey. But the Chaldeans and camels, they were all, the crops were getting destroyed. People, the winds. It says the four corners of the house were struck with wind, and it collapsed, and there's rocks falling from the sky, all kinds of stuff. 336 years later, you had King Saul, King David, and they had the Lord smite them with famine and disease and stuff like that. And if you think about it, if these things are bringing, space debris and things like that, especially comets, we call them like extremophiles or whatever. They can live in the upper atmosphere and actually transition, like the seeding theory. That's where maybe some of these famines and plagues pop up from. They could literally just come from, we're not used to it because we're not immune. And it'd just be a simple organism, really. It could be anything, common cold. But or mold, even. Just mold that kills our plants because they're not used to it. um I went another one. He said he got to choose between, being attacked by his enemy for 3 days, or yeah, 3 days, or 3 months of famine, or yeah, what was it? 3 years of famine, 3 months of being swept away by your enemies, or 3 days of the sword of the Lord. And he chose the God, because he thought God would be, you know, merciful or whatever in that sense. But that shows you another plague and bad things, like struck around, that time. So it's just the Bible's telling us this. Uh, Let me see here. 7 years of drought, and a lot of bad things happened then. So I mean, that could show you, possible pole shift or something getting close. And like I said, they had plagues and uh, the wrath of God, whatever that is. The meteorites, they talk about that a lot. So they could be figurative or realistic. I don't know. 358 years later, it's almost to its natural orbit again. I said that's the magic number in nature. You see 360 a lot. Jonah's warning, that's the destruction of the Assyrian army. I wrote it there in the Hezekiah sundial. It said Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord, and he went to Nineveh. Nineveh was a large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Took a day going through the city, saying 40 more days, and Nineveh will be overthrown. And then they believed him, and they fasted, and they put on sackcloth. They prepared, basically. Okay? So they saved their food and all that, and the rich people even, did it. So 40 days would be, a good heads up for seeing this thing come. About 40 days, you would start seeing it, and you'd start seeing it get big, especially if they're not chemtrailing the sky and trying to obstruct your view with, God knows what technology or whatever. We understand that.
Chemtrails are for conspiracy theorists, dude. They're not real.
Yeah, I see them every day, though. And they're
No,
always in
they're
northwestern
just
sky.
contrails, man. You don't know what you're talking about. It's swamp gas.
Northwestern sky, usually the northwestern part of the sky, usually maybe northeast of the sun. It's kind of,
I mean, all those X patterns, and all those checkerboards, man.
they're always
It's
there.
not real, okay? I mean, it's concentrated swamp gas, and it's I don't know. That's what it is.
Well, we know we can't see the stars in the daytime, right? But as soon as the sun goes down, we can see them. So that's
It's weird how that
process.
works, isn't it?
Yeah, it's photoionization. We're seeing, the air, the atmosphere. So understand that if they just fog up the atmosphere a little bit, you wouldn't see things that are a little bit behind the sun. Okay, it would be like if I'm holding a flashlight in your face and holding my fingers up behind the flashlight and asking you how many fingers I'm holding up, you're not gonna be able to tell. Okay, or I'll tell you to catch a ball while I'm holding a flashlight in your face. That's what we're doing. So I mean, it's working in their benefactor that it's behind the sun, because the sun's very bright. So, block out the sun, I guess, and try to see it any way that you can. Would be the best way, maybe. And like I said, I think it'd be below it and to the right, if you're in North America. That goes for the opposite anywhere below the southern hemisphere. So you got to remember, you'd be standing upside down on the globe, and your perception would be flipped. So, I'm saying if you're in Australia, it would be above and to the left, possibly.
Okay.
So, all right, we're going on. And it says, yeah, so he would have seen this thing in the sky for 40 days and then, kind of warned them about it. So they just prepared and, like they always say, they went to the mountains, this and that. And uh, but this is another part that was really, I thought, noticeable. Matthew 16, verse 3 through 4. And in the morning today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of a sky, but cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given except the sign of Jonah. Jesus left and went away. So Jonah was the crazy guy talking about Nibiru, saying, hey man, 40 days, this thing, we got to prepare. And the rich people even did it. Everybody listened because they could see it, obviously, in the sky is what I'm guessing. Um, and he said, I will make the shadow cast of the sun go back 10 steps as it's gone down the stair of Ahaz. So the sunlight went back 10 steps. And then you can look another verse, Kings 34, 35, 19, 34, 35. I will defend the city and save it for the sake of David. That night the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, they were all dead bodies. So he smited them with like fire and stuff and rocks. And there's biblical, I guess, like meteor storm or whatever it was. Then the angel of the Lord went out and put to death. I just kind of recited. I must have doubled it there. 352 years later, these people built a temple for themselves and not, I guess, a church or whatever is what the God was saying in it. And so he destroyed their crops and their building and their fields and their mountains and everything. So basically, so they worked for nothing, and that was the way it said. And it said, I'll shake the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the dry lands. I'll shake the nations, and what is desired by all nations will come. I'll fill this house with glory. And yeah. 362 years later, it's almost 360 again, so it went undisturbed. That's when the day before Jesus died, so we can go back up to that graph at the top again. There. So Jesus knew from about 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock the sun was blocked out. But this, like I said, they celebrate Passover on a full moon, and Jesus was sacrificed on a full moon. So that just shows you that the moon was not the object blocking out the sun. It's impossible. It's just impossible. And there you go. So even God, or Jesus, thought he was forsaken by God, at that moment. So that goes to show you that maybe God was a word or a euphemism or something, maybe nature or words unexplained, or I don't know. In the Christian Bible, I can't tell you, but I know that God.
The name God, the actual definition of God, if you look back a long ways, is unknown.
Unknown. See, that's what I was thinking. Like nature, a force of nature, something unknown. All that is, it's like when you take a piece of quartz or crystal and you smash it up, and you look at it through a telescope or what are they called? You know what I mean?
Kaleidoscope?
Yeah, no. A little
magnifying
microscope. A microscope.
Microscope.
You'll see that on the particles look the same. They're literally the same as the big image. And they even have like the same piezoelectric properties as the bigger piece, but on proportion to their scale. So when you add all those pieces together, they have more energy. And, just it's that in my mind is God. That is the collective consciousness. That is everybody's and everything and the energy and what we all, cycle through us, whether it be through food or the sun or, whatever. That whole consciousness, that would be God in my mind, that collected life, that in my mind would make sense and fit the bill.
We're all fractals of God at some level.
Yeah, so like basically when we're made in God's image, that's the same idea as what I was just giving you, smash up that crystal. We're the same thing, just on a smaller scale. And if we all came together and we all have that, collective consciousness and stuff, then we could, be godlike. If we could all work in tandem and help each other, what could get done, and just, I
But then
mean,
we'd all be like the Borg, you know? It'd be no
no, not
fun.
all the same, not all the same.
I'm just
No, I
joking.
don't mean that. You would have your own free flowing energy and be yourself, but just be connected, and not hate each other. Not, you know what I mean? Embrace the difference, you know what I'm saying? You know, and connect because of the difference. Because I like and specifying this, and you like and specifying that, we come together. We have the skills of both of us because, you did all that for your whole life, and I did this in my whole life. Now multiply that by everybody in the world. Everybody can do what they want, and be unique and be their self, but still, be helpful. You know what I mean? It's
We're all
that.
individual droplets, yet at the same time a part of the same ocean.
Yeah, it's exactly. When we're created in God's image, that's what I believe there was the euphemism for. This was divine knowledge, on a molecular level even, they were talking about the cells, just like Sitchin gets into it better with that stuff, like, when they're talking about everything. You look at the universe and how it works, and even how helium in a human child evolves. You know what I mean? Like how hydrogen and helium and all that, like the elements evolve. And you look at a human child and the cells and how they reproduce. It's the same thing. You know. So yes, like on a very large and a very small scale, we are all the same. It's just what manifestation of that frequency of energy. You know what I mean?
The holographic universe.
And like that's why a lot of people say like energy equals time. Like Einstein was wrong, and that's why they teach that Einstein and not Tesla type stuff. They like because it good information, wrong conclusion. Like you know, basically energy could manifest itself in any way, a form of matter and a form of time and a form of things like that. And that's how people could even solidly explain, those artifacts and appearing in random pieces of time. You could you could almost send like a rocket back into time. You know what I mean? If you had the right technology, it might like end up in the like, 20s or something. You know what I mean? I think that's completely possible because how space-time works. Like I said, I believe that you could totally be in two places at the same time because of how time works. I don't think it's curved. I think it's linear, but and that's just how it can work, like on a graph, you could have two things be there and be the different frequencies over top each other. Radio waves and ultraviolet rays and all these things can be in the same place. They're just different frequencies. I totally believe that. But anyways, so,
Nice.
but
So right now we're going to okay, you're on Kings 1934-35, and this is just basically, okay, 352 years, you pulled past that.
yeah, where I'm getting down here, that was
Okay.
Jesus was crucified, and
Uh-huh.
then um, so I had the constant, and or 284 years later, Constantine sees a cross in the sky, 312 AD. If you guys want a reference, look up the Battle of Melvin Bridge. He saw a sun with a cross, and the phrase "In this sign you shall conquer" Christianity, and that's a lot of weird stuff there, right? I mean, you go back to
Uh-huh.
the demonic possessions and weird things like that. Like, yeah, that's kind of odd that it appears, and then in the Bible it tells
I
you that
think a demon just spoke through you right there,
it was a
Jason.
demon. Yeah. 395 years later was the Mayan drought and the end of the Mayan Empire, 707 AD. Uh, yeah, it shows that there was a drought around their area around that time, geographically. You can look at the satellites and stuff like that. They disappeared, so who knows? I mean,
The Crab Nebula, though, the Chinese guest star and the creation of the Crab Nebula. That's
that is
interesting.
a book in a paper written by Lang Ho. If you typed that in, you will get the full reference in the book and the paper written by the man that did it. Now, a lot of people thought it was wrong because he thought it was a supernova exploding and things like that. Their interpretations of it were there was many and few and far between, but you could see it for. I'll read it to you. Chinese astronomers watched, documented, and accounted what they saw for a star getting bigger and bigger in the sky, and it was visible for a total of 642 days. The last day it was recorded to be seen was April 6th, 1056 AD, and was visible in the daytime for 23 days. This too correlates with the Passover in the 360-year orbit. Yeah, you guys can look that up. That was the first time. I mean, that's a big event. I mean, a new star appearing in the sky, and it was a couple times It was fractions of the moon. They were measuring it with fractions of the moon, like half the moon, two times the moon, things like that. So I mean, that's a big event. It's 2 years in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really excited about that. I would be too. And then you can go back and just see all the Renaissance paintings and things like that. But the timelines correlate with them. You can go see, because it's a painting, you could imagine that it could have been done, a couple years after, and maybe, So if you add those two together, I think it even correlates. It could be a shortened orbit though, because it would go back with it, because about 320 years to now, it would just make sense with the way satellites and everything works when you're rotating around sun, gaining, force. And then I made a little timeline for the revelations, just so we could go through
Well, I see
that.
here on the first one that you put Osama bin Laden as the rider on the white horse.
Because he had a bow. That's why to me it seems like that's the what started it. And he said he was white. I mean, he had the white gowns and stuff like that. I feel like that symbolism stuck to me. And when they said
Okay.
a bow, he said he had a bow. Remember, Osama always walked with a stick, and we always depicted him with a stick. And that's what they meant about the bow. They didn't mean like a bow and arrow. They meant a bow like a stick, a staff.
Huh.
And that's so I wrote that. And that, I mean, you want me to pull up Revelation 6 through 12, if you
No,
want.
I mean, you can if you want to, but I know what you're saying because I do remember when he was walking around, showing his Al Qaeda buddies, at least in these propaganda films. Obviously, he's like, "Okay, yeah, put the AK-47 around your back, and I want you to go across these monkey bars, and I'm going to time you with a stopwatch. Okay, go." I mean, it was just that's the kind of crap they were pushing down our throats, and I could totally tell they were prepping us for something because that's exactly. Do you remember that they were just force feeding it down people's throats?
Yeah, there were home videos made in caves. Yeah, right, man. That guy was funded by the CIA in like the 80s. Like we all documented. He was like shaking hands in our like headquarters and stuff, man. That's like he was our agent. He was put there. It's like we're gonna
Swamp
give
gas.
think about it, man. We're gonna give you guns. And they're like, wow, but you got to do this for us. But then they don't realize it's like Suicide Squad. You're just the fall guys, okay? They didn't realize they were going to get like that, like be subjugated like this. You know what I mean? They made a deal with the devil, and now they're the bad guy, okay? They made this deal. Then what are they going to say? Yeah, we bought a bunch of terrorist equipment. So you're saying you're terrorists? Yeah. Well, then you admitted to what they're claiming you are. You know what I mean? So did some terrorist acts to get some guns. I mean, yeah, but we didn't do this and that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was the sign. And the second seal was a rider on a red horse. I feel like I put three things. That was either the whole global terrorism outbreak with Osama bin Laden, the American presidency with Bush and Obama, or the Russian presidency or in Korea, because it's all the red, right? The red symbolism, and he was given a big sword, a huge sword, it says, and he was given power to cause war over the nations and make the nations fight and kill each other. I believe that already went through those two seals. The third seal is the black seal of the black horse, and it carried scales, and it made the things of the earth that we bought or like grew and stuff cost a lot, like the times we're going through right now, a global economical collapse. And they said after that was a rider of a pale horse, which was famine, death, hunger, disease, all the stuff that follows, an economical collapse. And after that is it's a part they call the Seal of the Martyrs, where I believe is coming soon, where they kill people that are talking about these events and warning other people and trying to get the awaken and trying to get people to unite and revolt and at least awaken and trying to, come together in some way against this, shadowy empire, basically anything it's we're being, subjugated, like I said, and the martyrs get killed basically for warning of these events. Okay, sixth seal. And if you look at the charts and stuff, I believe 5.5, 6 days, about 6 days after Passover, 2017, will be in the first meteor shower, just by the charts and everything that's going on, and through the debris trail the first time. And that's the beginning of the 1,260 days me and you discussed earlier in the last video too. The seventh seal is, you read it for verse, but it talks about, this stuff. And you could see the whole last video I did, that is the verses covered there. So that was that whole video we did is just that verse. 8 through 13. And we actually forgot to touch on the fact that Nibiru grows wings, appears to have wings and placed in the back of Virgo's neck. So she has, would sprout wings. And anybody that's an amateur astronomer would know when a comet or an object passes through between Jupiter and Mars, where they're saying this thing would go. No, let me pull this down a little bit. Jupiter and Mars. Okay, let's look at it from this view. Jupiter and Mars, where the asteroid belt is, where they said it came before, and where we have evidence it has been. When it comes between there, it grows a tail, a coma. That's what we call it, a coma. And an object that big would have two of them, it'd be coming off both sides like Hayachi's hair on Tekken, and any objects with it. So I guess that's where it came from. This is a picture of Babylon from above, Sodom and Gomorrah. Saddam Hussein actually rebuilt his temple right here. And this is the Tower of Babel right here. And that was in the Bible too. They said, something about that tower being rebuilt, would be a sign of the end times. And then there you go. Pretty cool. It actually talks about it being sunken in the Bible and gives a description of how it was sunken into the earth and part of the tower remained there until the whole town fell. And I got a close-up image of it here. Sorry. Right there. And just shows you, if you look at it, there's north straight up. At the time, people would, they'd build that, north, south, east, west. We've seen that with the other temples. This is called a ziggurat. That's because that's what a temple is over there. And yeah, you can tell that there's about at least a 15 degree tilt right there, from straight up and down the Pac-Man mouth or whatever you'd say right here, or right here, whatever side you want to do it on, about 15 degrees. So that's another thing. Here's the Nebra sky disk. You guys can look this up on Wikipedia or anywhere. But they found this, and it was actually looters found this. They found it and sold it on the black market, and then it was finally turned over. So we would have never had this artifact hadn't somebody came clean about it. But it shows their time, the same version of an all-sky cam. That's why you get the orientation of the ground over here and the ground over here, the sky lines and the ground. See, it's that little impression over here. It's just like when we look at the all-sky cam in a circular form, because they were aware they were on a globe looking up, so they gave the globe's perception looking up in reference to where they were with the ground and everything. So there's the moon being partially, and looks, there's 1, 2, 3 stars in between the moon and the sun, and they were saying it was being eclipsed there. They inlaid it with bronze and that. There's a lot of information that we pulled out of that, but definitely a 28 degree polar shift from where the stars are now in correlation to anything. You could even make like a far stretch. They'll be like, they'll say like the constellation is something else, but if you go back and look at the solid facts, that the constellation actually would be they had a closer straw they could have grasped at, and they didn't realize it, I guess. So they're, even the bunk explanations don't cut it, for it. So there's definitely a polar shift that shows this artifact, and you can date it because it's bronzed and metal, so they can date this right back to the second that person, poured that metal on there and dented it and played with it. So yeah,
that's
interesting.
Neat.
Very interesting. And yeah, so anything else we can go over?
And one thing I'd like to show you guys before we close out tonight, and I want to get your opinion on this, is first off, let me share some photos with you. We'll keep it on the screen that it's at here. Just give me one moment.
There you go.
Okay, and can you see the screen that I'm sharing now?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is Jason, and he sent this out to me. I want to say thank you very much, Jason, because these are some of the best photos that I have personally ever seen for evidence of there being a second sun, Planet X, whatever name you want to put to it. I think that these are pretty compelling. These are better than any of the ones that I've seen from a Skycam or Soho imagery. These are pretty good. So thank you, Jason, for sending these out. I certainly hope you'll give us an opportunity to, if you've got any more photos or video footage, I'm sure that you'll send those out to us. I hope so, and we'll definitely get those out to others here. Now take a look at this one. Boom. Look at that. So now you see the reflection off of that second sun right there.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see the one is an anomaly to the left. I think that's lens flare, obviously, or a reflection.
Well, they're both there. See the one below it and the one above it? That is actually both reflections of both objects. So both of them are giving hot, they're actually giving off heat. So you could turn the gamma down, both those on the left would disappear and both the right would stay. Yeah, that's definitely a hot object.
Bingo. Okay. So now let's go to the next one here. Now I'm going to pull this one up. Boom. Look at that.
See the double. See the double again?
Yep.
And how they correlate with where they are? They're both giving off heat. So if you turn down the gamma, the reflection would disappear and the real thing would stay. That's how you eliminate lens flare. Anybody that shows you a lens flare, just turn the gamma up and down. If it goes away, it's cold reflection and it's light reflecting off an object, not emitting from an object.
Okay. So, once again, Jason, accolades to you, my friend. That is a very good photo right there.
What hemisphere is he in?
He's in California.
California.
Yeah,
that's
look at that.
Very interesting.
Mather, California. Here's the date, August 18th, 2015. There's your location, ladies and gentlemen. If you can do an orbit or tracking or whatever you need to do to figure out where it is now, there's your reference point, August 18th, 2015.
That's very good, because make sure you guys mark in the elevation and the latitude and longitude.
Here's the
where he's at.
Here's the 22nd. Here's the 22nd of August. Take a look at that one. Boom. Look at that.
Yep. And both the objects are there again. So yeah, that's he's showing you real stuff there.
Some pretty good swamp gas, I'm telling you.
Well, you can't, like I showed you with the gamma, it's just you can't turn down gamma.
Now, obviously, yeah. Now, this right here, a lot of people will send me pictures, and I appreciate it, and I'll get these pictures where you can see this, like, aura, this reddish aura, and you'll see something in the middle of it, and you'll think, wow, that looks like the winged destroyer. That looks like Planet X for sure. That's got the same telltale signs. No, that's a reflection.
Yeah, the big part's actually, it's a refraction because you're looking through it through a curved piece of glass.
But look at this. Look at this. Dual reflections, once again.
Exactly.
See
That's
that?
how you tell.
Telling you.
Exactly how you tell.
Those are some cool clay pigeons right there.
Mm-hmm. See, there actually is a lot of information in that big reflection, but that's only to do with the angle of the camera and stuff like that with the sun. It's just, kind of ways to tell if something was faked, really, with the reflection. There is information in it, that's all.
What do you think of this one?
That looks pretty neat.
Okay.
Why is it so, why is it misshapen like that? Is that...
Well, I see, obviously you got your sun right here. I think this might be where it's setting right there.
Overexposed picture, yeah, I see.
And then, so this is an interesting one. I think this is a little different here. This is like just some type of chemtrail clouds that he sent out. And then I'm not sure.
See how the exposure on the camera's like that? Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing with the chemtrails, I believe. It's called photoionization, and everybody can look that up. Okay. That's why you only see them going towards the sun. It only works going towards the sun. The sun activates it, and if you make a grid pattern, you got to learn about catalysts. Anybody knows anything about catalysts? That's why they do a grid pattern.
Yeah, the grid patterns are very popular with them. Now, this one is the 22nd again, and here you go. You got your dual. Look at that, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's almost like Star Wars had it, programmed all those years ago.
Pre-programmed, absolutely. So then you got this guy right here. You got the dual.
And that goes with where it should be. It should be to the right of the sun in the northern hemisphere. That's about this time of year. Anyways, not in August. That's what I was saying. That's correlates with all my findings anyways.
Now, okay. And then, so this is, it looks like he did some different types of... look at that. It's got mono, tonal, chrome, fade. That's on that cloud that we were looking at. The weird.
Yeah, that's definitely hiding something. That's weird. I've never seen a cloud. I don't know. So, I don't know. It's just weird. It's almost like it was pasteled, like stretched across there.
Yeah, that's very odd.
He gets some good photos, and he lives in California, huh?
Yeah, and yeah, just some great shots.
Must be high up in elevation. I bet you that's I think that's have to do with it. Like when you're up or higher, you just the atmosphere's thinner, so they can't block as much.
This, like you said, this reminds me of the original Star Wars. Came out in what, 1977. That
Exactly.
was the year I was born. You know, I must be a Star Wars fan because my mom watched that movie the day before I was born, and then I've just been a big fan of
It's
Star
awesome
Wars ever since. You know, I mean, so
too.
it's pretty cool. So I'll tell you, man, this has been great to speak with you, Jason. I'm really glad you came on with us. You shared some just awesome information, and hopefully we can have the opportunity to do this again soon. If you want to put some other great gems together for us, that'd be
Yeah,
absolutely
I'm
fantastic.
gonna continuously work on what I can, and uh, prove us wrong, guys. I'd like to see somebody prove me wrong, and hopefully this is a fake, but it's not looking that way.
Oh
And
man. Well, and once again, even with that said, I'm not the guy that's going to go, well, I think we need to go, head for the bunkers and be
no,
prepared, and cuz I still
you
think we're going to
should
be
be
here.
prepared. You should always be prepared for an event. That's all. That's
Yeah.
just if you care about your family and your life, then you should be prepared for events that could happen. Like have a bug out bag. That's all. Don't. We're not trying to sell anything. We're not sitting here saying to sell in survival gear. You know what I mean? It's just, be prepared and for anything. That being said, that's not. That could be in the best of times.
Well, if you're going to go out, I mean, think of how much money you spend on car insurance, health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, supplemental insurance, I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And then typically today, most people don't even carry cash around, maybe 10, 20 bucks, because most of their money's in, they're going to swipe their debit card or credit card or whatever to pay for things. So if there's a glitch, if a virus goes out in the bank computer systems, if there's a solar flare that's really big that causes some satellites to go offline, there's so many different things that could happen. Why not be prepared? Have yourselves maybe a 3 month supply of food and water, or at least a couple of weeks, or at least
Yeah.
a week or something like that. And
Couple weeks and just or skills, maybe have just grow a garden, you know what I mean, things like that. Learn how to can and pot foods and meat like that. You can pot meats and stuff like that. I pot deer meat every once in a while, and that's like delicious. You
oh
can keep
yeah,
it in the freezer forever, and just things like that. Think ahead, things that you can save. I mean, if you grow it in your yard and put it in your freezer, that's not costing you a thing, just a little bit of time. And I mean, what's that? What comes worst if you have a good spaghetti that night? Oh well, we prepared you to have a good dinner one night. you
damn
know,
you. You
yeah.
know, and we had John Michael Greer on with us a while back. He's a very well educated. He's an excellent author. He's written over 20 books. Philosopher. He's also, I think, the master arch druid for the Golden Dawn. He's a very intelligent person, and he thinks that the civilization right now that we're in is slowly going to decline for the next 100 years. 100 years from now, it's going to be a lot more primitive, a lot less electronics type stuff, but eventually it will turn back around. But he just thinks it's going to be a real long, slow process. But he said, you know what, Rex? He said, instead of being one of those guys that goes out and puts together a year's supply of food and water and, builds this just incredible bunker system where they've got these containers that are underground that they set up with tons of food and water and supplies. Don't be that
Seeds.
guy. Be the dude that knows how to make beer.
Yeah.
Because
That's
if
a
you can
skill.
make good beer when if shit does hit the fan and people need, you're going to have warlords and these gang members and stuff that are just ruthless, and they can pretty easily break into some people's houses sometimes
Yeah.
if they can overthrow them. But if you know how to make good beer, they'll let you do your thing. Hey, man, just make them a good ale here and there.
Have a skill, exactly. Have a skill. And even if it's like just something minor like that, like making beer or whatever, you could just literally use it. Like I was thinking, people are like, oh, well, I want to save money, and you're telling us not to save money, and, that's not stimulating the economy and this and that. They need to understand that it's all borrowed fake money, and none of it's really there anyways. And if you do want to be smart and save money and invest in things, buy things like precious metals that you really need to rebuild society, like silver and gold. You know, those things are very precious in electronics and everything else in the world, and their value will never go down. You want to get a hold of some big.
just for
If you had extra money, is what I'm saying. You know, for people that want to do invest.
unless you got a whole
Well,
bunch of money though, Jason, and I'm not trying to interrupt, man, but as far as the gold and silver thing goes, I have a
if you
little bit
don't
of
have the money, don't buy it.
a
Exactly.
different opinion on that. I mean, you need okay. Do you really need bars of gold and silver? I
No,
mean,
no. What I'm saying is that those things are going to be precious no matter what, especially if in
yeah.
the case of like a electromagnetic pulse or something where it fries and melts circuitry. You know what I mean? Like
Who knows how to make that stuff though? They're all in China.
no, I understand
You
that.
know what I mean? I
I
mean,
get the
if you
idea,
got all
but
this
it's
gold
still
and silver, and
precious.
you're like, "Hey guys, I got bars of gold and silver," well, well, I've got food and I've got real estate and I've got assets and I can protect myself. I mean, gold and silver. Don't get me wrong. I can understand having if you want a few rounds or something, or if you've got lots of money and you want to diversify your assets, I totally get it. But if you're the common folk individuals, and when you say that, but
Exactly.
that money doesn't have any value, yeah, it does. I mean, I've heard that before too, but it's got plenty of value. I'd rather have $1,000 in cash than $1,000 in gold because if things do hit the fan, I'm going to be able to spend that $1,000 cash a lot quicker than that gold. You know, it's like people could be like, "I don't want your gold, man. What am I going to do with this? How do I know that's real gold? I don't know how to look for real gold." But if you got cash, they'll take that, and you'll be able to. Obviously, if things are so bad that you can't use cash to buy stuff, do you really
It
think
would
people
only
are going
be
to want to
bad
barter
for a
for gold and
while. It'd
silver?
be like a weakened infrastructure. You know what I mean? I don't think it's like cataclysmic, like you said. I believe that we're gonna survive it, and a lot of people will be in some bad shape. You know, and there're gonna be a lot of stuff because we're so dependent on things like that. But like I said, that doesn't mean it's world ending. You know what I mean? Like the transitions. You know what I mean? I think the money worth is like setting up for a failure, and it's just gonna collapse. You know, like I said, the when I mean money don't have worth, it's all I'm saying. It's a binary electronic number in a computer. Is all I meant. You know, like you were saying, swiping the card. That's all I meant. It used to actually be backed by a product, and now it's not. You know,
Well,
it's a note.
in
So
America, yeah, but you look at countries like Germany when they were bankrupt. They were a bankrupt nation, and it took wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread at one point.
yeah,
So Hitler goes out and says, "Okay, well, you know what we're going to do? We're not going to pay these offshore interest anymore. We're going to create our own money, and we're going to back it based upon services, not metals." And then that way they can say, okay, well, this value is equal to X amount of hours or that much man service. You can put whatever you want to back a currency.
socialism is like a cool idea when it
Not
comes to some
socialism.
parts.
No, 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 no,
No,
no,
when
no.
you're labeling it like that, I
Not
mean, yeah,
not socialism.
also.
No, we're talking you can create money and back it with anything you want. The money is going to be backed upon people that care about that money, or it's the economy, it's the people behind it. So I mean, I remember when
faith you
Max
put in it,
Kaiser. Hold on a second. I remember when Max Kaiser, this kind of pissed me off a few years ago. He was like, "Oh man, take your dollars and throw them out in the streets because they're not worth anything, and
No,
the
not like
bankers would freak out if you did that." And I'm thinking, give me a break, man. Go ahead and throw your dollars my way because it's worth something. And people
Yeah,
like you and me, Jason, it's people like you and me and others out there that keep the dollar strong. If we believe
exactly.
in it, and if we're still spending our monies, then there's going to be a good chance until these elite aristocrats that do have enough power to pull the strings, at least until then, we can keep the economy propped up. But like you said, have some assets and diversify. Don't put everything in one basket. But if you got 10 grand in the bank, I wouldn't recommend going out and spending half of that on gold and silver.
No,
Put it
exactly.
put it somewhere. And most people don't have 10 grand in the bank.
No,
You know what
I
I
get
mean?
that. I'm saying there's people that saying, you know, like I want to have a future, and they have all this money and they want to invest. Like they're talking about a lot of money. It's like, well, if you're going to talk about that, like you could like you said, diversify. You could buy something that's going to be valuable. You know what I mean? Whatever your prediction may be. You know what I mean? I just said silver and gold because, you know, gold may be hard to get a hold of. Silver may be easier to get a hold of, you know? I was just saying that as a aspect to look at. But yeah, hyperinflation, basically, like you're saying with Germany and all that's happening in Venezuela right now, you know? You need like 11,000 of their dollars to go eat lunch, you know? It's crazy, you know? Their menu prices right now have just blank labels over them because they have to write them in every day because the money changes every day that fast. So,
Jeez.
like, it's ridiculous. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I understand that, but I don't believe in a federal banking system. I believe that we should back our own money, like you said, with our own source. Because when you're loaning out money on like a 25% interest, that means, just say you're a country, you're Rex country and Rextopia, and you want to make a dollar on the federal bank. Okay, here's a dollar. You owe me $1.25, but there's only $1.20 or a dollar in existence. So you
Right.
always owe me $1.25. You know what I mean? You always
Right.
owe me that 25 cents.
It's
And
the
then if I
ultimate
print you
Ponzi
that
scheme.
extra quarter, you're getting another 25% interest, and you're really just getting fed into the trap more and more, you know, because you got interest on top of money that was already interest, you
Well,
know.
and that's how they take over small countries. And
Exactly.
who was the gentleman that we had on our show that actually used to be an economic hitman? And he would go out and get countries to sign over their land, their assets, and everything so that these guys could go. John Perkins. John Perkins. He wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And this guy literally worked for the system. He would meet kings and queens of certain countries. He would meet these, dictators, and basically he would sell them on letting the U.S. go in with their contractors and build roads and nuclear reactors and infrastructure. And few people would really profit big time from it, and they would promise everybody would. And if the person that ruled that country, whether this was an emperor or a king or anybody, if they didn't play ball, guess what would happen next?
More.
Well, they'd send in hit teams.
Oh, yeah.
And guess what happens if the hit teams didn't win, didn't get them?
What's that?
They send in the military.
Yeah, exactly. Roll in with war. That's what I figured. That's like what was going on like right before 2001. You look, we had like Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, or Iraq. Yeah, no, Iran and Afghanistan. None of them had a Federal Reserve. Now that list is Cuba and North Korea. Okay, and what are we talking about doing now? We're being buddy buddy with Cuba, and we hate North Korea because they will not side with. They're not going to give their money. He's not going to make a Federal Reserve deal. You know what I mean? He
Mm-hmm.
just will not do it. And everybody looks at him and paints him as a bad guy. Yes, he's a crazy little man, but you got to remember who controls the media.
I usually don't have an opportunity to interject as much with people I talk to, but you're really kind of my brain's going a million miles right now, and you're really bringing up some good things that I want to discuss with you. So a moment ago when we were talking about the gold and silver, I certainly wasn't getting on your case or anything. I just feel that that's one of those things that people, that many of those out there that really have super good intentions, but they don't have a whole lot of money and they're looking for ways to spend it. I kind of feel like they get trapped into that thinking you got to go spend it on gold and silver, when in reality, if things hit the fan, that's probably not going to have a whole lot of tangible, assets to you at that specific time. But, once again, diversify. And if you got the money to spend, hey, right on. I'm not telling you what to spend your money on in any way, shape, or form. I mean, seriously, watch these guys. Do you remember back when they had the big scare when, Kim Jong-un's going to send these nuclear missiles in California, and he was with all his generals, which look like they're about ready to go to some freaking retirement home. I mean,
Yeah.
don't they? They look like they need oxygen and a walker. They're about 80 years old, right? And they're all standing by him, going, "Oh yes, we love you, Kim. We love you." And he's
Fiery storm to Washington.
yeah. Well, dude, I mean, okay, they're going to show us what they're going to do, right? They're going to show us on this big poster, we're going to blow you up there, and there. We're going to send missiles that way because we don't know that you have satellites and laser systems and cutting technologies that's way superior to ours. So we're going to let you know where we're going to send these missiles out beforehand. And then you see him out on the beach hanging out with his general buddies, and there's nobody else around him but his general friends, and it'd be so easy to send a drone strike in there or something like that. Just boom!
Just
Take him
wax
out
him, yeah.
immediately. And yet this guy is just hanging out with his buddies, having fun, and, this is where we're going to nuke you. Whether or not the guy is an actor, in my opinion, North Korea is in no way, shape, or form a threat. It almost, in my opinion, they're setting that up in scenes like the movie Wag the Dog.
They are. That's exactly what I was saying. They're trying to get us to back that so they can enforce just allow somebody to basically attack them and have us sanction it. Have the American people and the people of the world say, yeah, that was justified. And then they're taken over. We give them a government, and then they're all of a sudden a part of the World Federal Reserve. That's why we're being buddy buddy with Cuba. And then everybody in the world will have their money ran through the Rothschilds banking system. There's only two countries, and it's North Korea and Cuba. And I mean, watch the news, you'll see. You'll see which two countries will come up now.
So they've got it set up in Iran now. Then.
Yeah, I believe that Iran already has it set up because that was why we invaded. They wanted to go switch it from the euro. They already had the petrodollar, and that's why they still call it the petrodollar, because they didn't actually officially switch it to the euro or anything. So, yeah, oil is still traded with the American dollar. So, yeah, they're still part of it.
Well, and they've been saying for 4 years now that the U.S. dollar isn't going to be able to purchase goods and fuel from other countries, and it certainly doesn't seem like it's affected us here at home enough to, at least me anyway, or many people that I know. I mean, for most part, the economy right now is doing pretty good. It's not doing great, but it's doing fair.
I believe where they get a lot of the money making is from the stock markets and these events that they already have staged, because they know where the money to go and things like that. They can basically just make a prediction based on what they know is going to happen and make money. And like I said, the money is the faith you put into it, but they understand it a little bit more complexly than we do, because of the interests and the deals and everything. They do understand it, you know what I mean? It's a way to get people to, pour your heart and soul into something and not have as much as you would have, 10 or 15 years ago, if you put it that way. Because I remember things before this whole, 2001 thing. It was, I mean, gas prices went up, and then everything else goes up because it takes gas to get everything everywhere, you know what I mean? And I just felt like that was the surefire way to manipulate the market, was through gasoline prices, And even if it's just shaving numbers here and there, and it's not really hurting us to where we're homeless or this and that, or we just, we don't go out to eat as much and things like that, like you're saying, it's not like really hurting our pockets that much, you know what I mean? It's still there. It's like when one place is doing really good and its neighbor's doing really bad, but they're both like honest, hardworking people, that's a pretty good sign that something's wrong, especially if it's like a whole country, you know what I mean? And that's all over the globe, So, I mean, it doesn't take geniuses to figure out that we need change, but I don't think it's like a one world government with a bunch of evil dictators, pulling the strings, you know what I mean? And maybe a global money system would be like a nice idea if everybody still got to keep their own money systems, Like you could buy into Walmart bucks or whatever this international dollar would be, you know what I mean? But you could still keep your own money, your monetary, your country's value, you know what I mean? Just like buying tokens or something online, or, e-coins or whatever, you know what I mean? Or a gift card. It'd be the same idea. Why couldn't you do that if you wanted to trade? Just trade it into, a unit that's universal. You could keep your own money and just have an exchange rate. That's all. Makes sense to me. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, there's so many cool possibilities. I know that there's a gentleman that's trying to get me to interview somebody from the Venus Project, which is a resource-based economy, and there's so many different possibilities and opportunities.
Sense. I like that idea. I really do. Like people call it, like I said, people call it socialism. That's so I know. That's like just the label. Like when you're I don't consider it that. Like you're working in exchange for a good, you know what I mean? You get this much, you're allowed these comforts, this home, this much vehicle, this much amenities for this type of job. And if you want to take on more responsibilities, you can get more comforts, but it's going to take more work and responsibility. But then they say that takes away creativity, and
it does. I mean, how do you decide how much time? Well, right. I mean, how do you decide how much time equals what? You take an hour of shoveling snow versus an hour of giving a presentation in front of 50 people about how to save money on car insurance. I mean, heck, I don't know. I mean, how do you justify that? You know what I mean? So I think that money is
calories burnt.
Right. I think money's good. I mean, it's good to have money in exchange, and there's nothing wrong with credit cards and debit cards and ATM machines. And I think that's all good. It's just like, where do you draw the line? I mean, if there's people out there that have $1 trillion, why do you give them or $1 billion or $100 million? Why do you give them more tax breaks than somebody that makes $25 an hour or $15 an hour? Just, I mean, shouldn't there be some kind of balance there as well for the middle class? Because the middle class used to keep this country propped up so much, yet now it seems whoever's running things behind the scenes really wants to do away with the middle class and have this dystopia type society.
Yeah, they don't. They want a vast, basically just a vast leap between the money, and that them have it all, and then give us the little trickle that they want us to have. And they're the ones making the rules and the laws. It's the ones that are in the position of power, like the less deserving and the least deserving of it. The most humble, hard-working person probably knows, what the hard-working, person needs and would want, like free healthcare, things like that.
Excuse me, sir, may I have another?
You think about like you just look at the countries with free healthcare and stuff like that, and how their problems are reduced. It's taken care of with their taxes and things like that. And then the doctors aren't making millions, and people aren't sick. It's just the crime goes down. All of it is, I don't know. The more comfortable people are, the less, civil unrest, I guess.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with making millions, especially if you put 10 years of your life into college and spend $200,000 for an education.
I'm not talking bad about that. I'm saying a lot of the doctors will buy MRIs and X-ray machines and stuff like that, and then charge the hospitals every time they use it, and then pay for that thing like 10 times over.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, why wouldn't you, all right, just buy that, maybe when you break even, donate it to the hospital. Like break even, go ahead, charge the hospital till you make your money back, that, you still donated your money to get them the object, that'd be great, but I don't know. I feel like there's a person in my town, a doctor, that just wrote to the newspaper and took like a Supreme Court hearing in about the 10 Commandments being out front of the courthouse downtown. And this is historic Cumberland. It was actually George Washington set up the courthouse down here, and after the war they were all beat up, and it was before like DC and all that was built. He had his lodge here, and this was like the capital at the time, before DC. And they're going to go and change that courthouse and take down the 10 Commandments, because he wants to be whatever. But he was a doctor, and I felt like because he was educated and, versed and thought he could, say things about the Constitution, he was basically just going to be a dick and make problems and make that an issue when it's not an issue. When he's got a lot of money, there's people starving, all kinds of real issues, and he's worried about that. Our area has a drug problem caused by the doctors writing out prescriptions and stuff like that, because we have a lot of bad doctors in the area that just do that. They make money off pain management and, people, junkies in the area, basically, wanting their pills. So, and I mean, it's a huge problem in my area, like I said, and I just don't agree with that aspect. Yes, there's a lot of good doctors and things like that, but what, like you said, where do you draw the line? Where are you going to stop being corrupt? What are you going to become, when you make all this money?
Well, and even the doctors out there, I mean, it's interesting because many of them are supposed to be so smart, yet if you present very solid, tangible evidence that what they have been taught isn't correct, they go into this disconnect mode and they have to stick up for what they've been taught, not only because of the conditioning process that they went through to get that position, like residency and just the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours that they've gone through with indoctrination. So they're under one of the most amazing forms of mind control. And, I don't know if that was by design, yet you've got very few people out there that use their brains that are doctors to think outside of the box. And it's the pharmaceutical companies, in my opinion, that have taken the majority control of the industry. The pharmaceutical companies and these insurance companies that make people sicker and give them these sweet pills of poison, little Band-Aid effects, and create more problems down the road to continue to sell them more products and bring a shorter lifespan to many people.
Yeah, it's like the religions destroy spirituality, the hospitals destroy health, and you can pretty much, like, the government destroys, freedoms. So you can pretty much realize that we're in backwards times, and it's not a genius. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out, It's sad times we're in, and it's time to be the change that
America
we want to see. America.
Land of the free.
But yeah, see, that's exactly what it was. See, Iran they wanted to not be a part of the Federal Reserve, so they called them terrorists, and multiple other reasons behind 9/11, and because the building needed to go and things like that, insurance money, things like that. They made a lot of profit off of it, and it was a false flag attempt to get us to say America, freedom, you know. And then you could honestly say around 2001, just about everybody in America just did not like the Middle East. You were almost like subjected to profile these people because the news and like the conditioning. And I was in like seventh grade, man. And they literally brought the TVs in at around 9 a.m. and forced us to watch that stuff all day on the news. We didn't have class. We watched 9/11 on the news live. And
Oh, they programmed you with that during school,
yeah,
huh?
think about it, man. And then one of the
Wonderful.
kids said something about, our school's next. Don't tell anybody. And that kid was suspended for 10 days for writing that on a letter, just kidding to his buddy next to him. Somebody was being a dick and just said, oh, he wrote this on a letter. And they literally expelled that kid for 10 days out of school. It's like the craziest stuff I've seen. I was there. Like I said, the mental subjugation. Then the next year, you'd see kids with T-shirts that had like an American soldier holding up like a beaten Taliban corpse or something, like in a cartoon form on the back of their shirt, saying some kind of American slogan and stuff. You've seen it everywhere. And it
And
was just
now
accepted.
it's the exact opposite. Now, if you have an American flag on and you are in high school in California, they'll make you go home.
Yeah, that's in the Bible too. They predicted this big Muslim Christian war, and then you go back to the Robert Peck paper, or whatever it was, that Illuminati, stonemason paper where he, proposed whatever it was, basically gave like world
Albert Pike,
domination
the
plans.
33rd degree Freemason.
Yeah, Albert Pike. There you go. He even said that stuff. I mean, he was really adamant about state of Islam and Muslims and Christians like kind of just destroying each other. You know what I mean? Like having a that's what you can see it both ways. Like I said, they incite the war. Like the Jews and the Muslims and all that. They're fighting over their little promised land, their homeland. Like what people don't understand is, all right, like the Muslims' most holy site is built on top of the Hebrews, the Jewish people's most holy site, and for the Jewish prophecy to come true, the Muslim place basically has to be leveled and destroyed for their prophecy to come true and for them to go back to their homeland and have it. So like their shrine, that big Mecca, that cube or whatever, would literally and all that would have to be like gone and annihilated for their prophecy to be fulfilled, man. And that's pretty wild stuff. You can look at it both ways, like both aspects, like if you get into it deep. But a lot of people don't know that. There's literally just kind of, for whatever religion to be right, it all bases on their the homeland and who has it last, I guess. And it's kind of strange that it's all coming down to that.